Not everyone is meant to wake the serpent fire. You were not meant to force this flame. Kundalini is a mechanism, not a mantra. Voltage without vessel fractures rather than freeze. For millennia, temples from Kemet to Tantra hid the maps not to hoard power but to protect the unready. In an age of instant activations and merchandised bliss, the most dangerous illusion is that you can summon divinity on demand. You can't. Tonight we strip the slogan from the science and the myth from the method. Breath as steering wheel, spine as staff, light as information. We'll trace the hidden lineage, decode the body's circuitry, and tell the truth about what happens when the current outruns capacity. This is not an invitation to chase visions. It's a warning and a map for builders, not thrill seekers. You are not here to awaken Kundalini. Kundalini is here to awaken you if you are willing to become the vessel it requires. You were never meant to meet this current as a tourist. In the old houses of knowledge, from the courts of Kemet to the tantric gurukuls of India, Kundalini was not a poster on a studio wall. It was an initiatory fire guarded by elders who checked your vessel before handing you a single spark. The symbols were not decor. The jed pillar was a spinal blueprint for stability under voltage. The Eye of Horus mapped the inner sight that opens only when the nervous system is truly quiet. The caduceus, twin serpents around a staff, was a field manual for the body's currents, not a hospital logo. In those lineages, secrecy was not a wall. It was a safety rail. You had to learn how to hold breath like a steering wheel, attention like a lens, and the body like a temple that can conduct without burning. You were observed, tested, corrected. Sometimes the most compassionate instruction was, "Not yet." Lineage existed because humans break when voltage outruns preparation. That is why temples used oaths, ordeals, and supervisors who could say no without apology. In Kemet, initiation was statecraft for the body. Desert nights were chosen for their silence, limestone halls for their acoustics, darkness retreats to rest the outer eyes so the inner lens could learn to notice. In tantric chambers, you learned bandhas as circuit locks and mantra as a metronome for the nervous system. Fasting and service were not moral theater. They were ways to clear residue so more current could move without distortion. The map wasn't metaphor. It was a manual, encoded in story, space, and soma so it could travel through empires intact. Some teachings can't live on YouTube. Join the free newsletter via the link in the description, enter your email, and for a limited time you'll also receive a free ebook copy of our ebook so you can study the diagrams and cautions we can't publish here. Secrecy wasn't elitism, it was consent and containment. Lineage promised three things. Modern spiritual retail rarely provides: screening, supervision, and integration. Screening meant someone older in the work asked unromantic questions: sleep, food, trauma history, medications, relationships, employment, because power amplifies whatever it touches. Supervision meant you weren't alone when the first tremors arrived, when heat gathered behind the eyes, when the spine felt like it wanted to breathe. Someone watched your pulse and your pride. Integration meant your visions were carried back into ordinary life. Chores done, debts paid, speech cleaned. It was never more fireworks. It was more function. Real teachers didn't sell transcendence. They taught capacity. The maps were carried in 3 languages at once. Story-guarded truth in images that could pass through regimes. The serpent that rises, the god who dies and returns, the lamp hidden in the skull. Space taught by resonance, chambers tuned to particular tones, courtyards laid to sunrise alignments, corridors that pressed sound into bone so breath would find its cadence. Soma, your lived body, was the final scroll. Elders read microsigns, a jaw that wouldn't unclench, a gaze that scattered, a chest that lifted instead of softened. If the body lied, the map waited. If the body steadied, the next gate opened. Progress was not measured by visions reported, but by steadiness that could be tested in conflict, fatigue, and silence. Colonizers and later reductionists flattened those 3 languages into superstition or spectacle. The maps didn't disappear, their context did. A jed became decor, the eye became a logo, the caduceus became a badge while its meaning slipped from the curriculum. Popular culture kept the shapes and sold the shine. What got lost was the ethic. You don't court a storm until you have a harbor. In the lineage view, craving for miracles is just another addiction. You don't feed it, you retrain it. You turn devotion into discipline. You turn hunger into practice. You keep the coal warm by work, not by worshiping the flame. You, living in an age of instant access, have to rebuild what place used to provide. That means you become your own temple keeper. You choose silence over noise long enough to hear your baseline. You choose teachers who can name their teachers and who can say stop without losing your fee. You choose a pace your nervous system can still celebrate tomorrow. You learn the difference between signs of opening and signs of overwhelm. Opening humbles and steadies, appetite returns, sleep deepens, ordinary kindness increases. Overwhelm inflates and fractures, appetites vanish or spike, sleep shatters, relationships go brittle even as your stories get bigger. The map teaches you to read those signals and adjust the dose. There is one more reason the lineages guarded the fire: ethics. Power without conscience corrupts quickly, and spiritual charisma can hide unfinished work. So initiates pledge not only to practices but to conduct, a discipline of speech, sexuality, money, and influence, because current plus shadow is a dangerous mixture. A true elder will put your integrity ahead of your ecstasy. They will ask how you treat strangers, how you keep promises, how you return to ordinary life after the vision. They will remind you that gifts are for service, not display. No badge, no brand, no story outranks the way you move through a market, a family, a road at midnight. This is why the old maps endure. They weren't made to entertain you. They were built to outlast regimes, trends, and your moods. Read them as mechanisms and you stop chasing the serpent. You start preparing the staff. You stop begging for more current. You start building more capacity. You stop treating symbols like toys. You start using them as tools. And when you do, secrecy makes sense, not as a wall to keep you out, but as a door that opens when you are ready to carry what waits on the other side. From here, we stop reading stone and story and turn to the living temple itself, the body through which the current moves. You don't meet this teaching in a book, you meet it in tissue. The old symbols only make sense when the living temple starts to echo them. Think of your spine as a staff, your breath as the steering wheel, your attention as the lens, and your nervous system as the wiring that decides whether the house lights up or burns. The serpent was never simply a snake. It was a waveform, an undulating pattern of charge and rhythm moving through bone, breath, and brain. When you feel heat gather low, pressure rise behind the eyes, or a fine tremor shimmer up the back, you are not imagining energy. You're noticing a change in tone and conductivity. That's mechanism, not mythology. Here's a simple language we'll use because clarity keeps you honest. Capacity, how much charge your system can carry without fragmenting. Regulation, your ability to return to baseline after a surge. Overwhelm, when charge outruns capacity and you flip into panic, collapse, or dissociation. Integration, when an experience becomes function, you sleep, relate, focus, and serve better. In lineage houses, progress was never measured by visions recounted but by function tested. The same standard applies here. Your autonomic nervous system, the quiet governor, runs two broad modes: mobilize and settle. Breath is the most direct legal free handle you have on that governor because the body listens to carbon dioxide, stretch, and rhythm like a conductor's cue. Slow, nasal, diaphragmatic breathing tends to signal safety. Shallow upper chest gasps tell the body to brace. The vagus nerve, winding from brainstem through heart, lungs, and gut, carries that message. When your breath lengthens and your exhale softens, heart rate variability often improves, digestion nudges back online, pupils ease. When you hyperventilate yourself into alkalosis, your tingling hands aren't mystical, they're chemistry. Kundalini work respects this because truth lives in mechanism. Traditional models describe three channels: Ida, Pingala, Sushumna. Treat them as a functional map, not a dogma. Ida, the lunar current, mirrors calm, cool, receptive states. Pingala, the solar current, maps to alert, warm, mobilized states. Sushumna is the central track, steady, centered, unhooked from swings. Modern cues echo this. The nasal cycle alternates flow between nostrils across the day. Alternate nostril breathing nudges balance. Symmetrical, slow breathing invites the central track. When practitioners speak of the serpent rising, what often changes first is not light in the skull, but load distribution in the nervous system. Less seesawing between fight, flee, and freeze, more time in clear, grounded presence. That's the body choosing Sushumna. Micro story. The first time you notice the serpent isn't in a cave, it's on a Tuesday. The meeting ends. Your jaw unhooks. Warmth spreads across your lower back like late sun on stone. Your breath drops into your belly without you asking it to. For 10 minutes, you don't need music or a screen. You stand up slower, speak softer, answer a message you'd been avoiding without drama. Nothing happened, and everything did. That's the current choosing function over fireworks. Because voltage without vessel breaks things, you learn to titrate one knob at a time. Posture is a knob. Lengthen the back of the neck. Let the ribs soften, stack head over heart over pelvis. Breath rate is a knob. Extend the exhale by a count or two. Keep it quiet, keep it nasal. Attention is a knob. Widen your field to include the room, your feet, the horizon, not just the swirl behind your eyes. Time is a knob. Minutes, not marathons at first. Change one knob and watch what happens for 24 hours. Sleep, appetite, mood, social friction. If your life works better tomorrow, that was opening. If you feel brittle, boastful, insomniac, or spiritually grand while practical life phrase, that was overwhelm. Turn the knobs back. Signals matter. Opening signs are boring in the best way. Steadier appetite, warmer hands and feet, unforced tears that end with relief. Sleep that deepens. Ordinary kindness that returns without you faking it. Overwhelm signs are loud and theatrical. Crown pressure that escalates into headaches. Heat that won't distribute. Restlessness that becomes compulsion. Moralizing that outpaces your actual conduct. Relationships cracking while you chase the next hit of energy. The lineage rule is ruthless and kind. If function falls, you are not advancing, you're flooding. Pause, ground, simplify. The current is not offended by your brakes, it prefers a driver who can steer. You will hear people say surrender. Yes, and be precise about what you're surrendering. You don't surrender your discernment, your safety, or your ethics. You surrender the hurry, the spectacle, the fantasy that more voltage is more spiritual. The body does not care about your timeline. It cares about conductivity and repair. Fascia needs time to unwind. The diaphragm needs time to relearn movement. The spine needs time to stop bracing. If you force, you will mistake a sympathetic jolt for spiritual breakthrough and pay for it with weeks of fractured sleep and frayed speech. If you pace, the same current that could have burned you will begin to irrigate places that have been dry for years. A note on signs many romanticize: tremor, heat, inner sound, flashes of light. Tremor can be a healthy discharge, like an animal shaking off stress or a sign you've asked too much, too fast. Heat can be circulation returning or inflammation shouting. Inner sound can be the nervous system's own electricity becoming audible to attention, not a cosmic radio. Flashes behind the eyes can be entoptic phenomena made louder by stillness. None of this cancels the mystery. It situates it so you don't outsource your sanity to spectacle. Input arrow, process arrow. Output is a useful lens. Input, posture, breath, sound, attention, context. Process, chemoreceptors, baroreflex, vagal tone, spinal motor patterns, cortical inhibition. Output, state, clearer or crazier, kinder or pricklier, steadier or scattered. You don't need a lab to use this, you need honesty. Keep a small log for 2 weeks. What you track will teach you faster than what you chase. Finally, the old houses never separated mechanism from meaning. They tuned the body so that when the current rose, it would engrave virtues, not merely visions, patience, truthfulness, restraint, generosity. That is how you know the serpent is choosing you back. Your life gets simpler and truer. From here, with the staff understood, we take the steering wheel in both hands, breath and vibration, the way you tune the instrument before you dare play higher notes. Breath is the steering wheel, but only if you hold it lightly. Force it and the body fakes compliance and sends you the bill later. Pace it and the system retunes from the inside out. Treat breath as metronome and messenger. It sets rhythm, carries information, and tells your nervous system whether to brace or soften. The serpent is not summoned by wish. It answers to cadence. Start where biology listens first. Through the nose, low and quiet. Nasal breathing filters and humidifies air and invites the diaphragm to move like a bellows instead of dragging the neck into duty. Let the cadence slow until the exhale is longer than the inhale. A simple 1-to-2 ratio many bodies recognize as safety. You are not chasing a number. You are offering a signal. As carbon dioxide rises slightly, chemoreceptors calm. The heart and lungs begin to dance together, and the baroreflex finds a steadier beat. Blood warms the hands again. Digestion remembers its job. The floor inside you stops feeling like a sprung trap and starts to feel like ground. Rhythm is voltage language. Short, sharp inhales say mobilize. Long, unbroken exhales say stand down. Even spacing says we can stay. That is why alternate nostril patterns are so disarming. They bias the system toward balance rather than speed. In older houses, you learned bandhas as circuit locks, subtle pelvic floor engagement, a gentle lift beneath the navel, a soft lengthening through the back of the neck so the pressure you create with breath travels the central track instead of leaking into strain. Keep them soft. Props, not pride. If effort roughens the breath or the jaw begins to grip, you are asking for voltage before you have a vessel. Ease first, then depth. Sound is breath made visible. Humming, whispering, chanting, the body is a resonator with chambers in skull, throat, chest, and belly. Close the lips and hum for a minute and you will feel the face buzz, the tongue loosen, the throat unclench. Many find the mind goes quiet not because of magic, but because vibration occupies channels that rumination tries to hijack. Simple tones, open vowels, a long or the classic syllable that begins in silence and ends in resonance, organize attention and massage the vagal network. In that quiet, the serpent shows itself as a waveform, not a spectacle. A tide that rises through the spine, smooth, patient, precise. Micro-story. You lie on the floor after a long day and hum on the exhale for 5 slow rounds. The room does not change. Your radius does. Shoulders land. Vision softens. The list that owned you 10 minutes ago loses its teeth. You stand up and you are less clever and more kind. That is what real energy work looks like when it works. Behavior shifts. Spaces shape breath. Stone reflects sound. Domes collect it. Long corridors press it into bone. Old chambers were tuned by accident or design to tones that travel well in the human body. Sit in a place that holds a note and your breath will find tempo without coaching. You do not need a pyramid for this. A quiet room, heavy curtains, a rug under your spine, and a phone in airplane mode do more than any glossy activation. The rule is subtraction first. Less noise, less light, fewer interruptions. When the world quiets, the waveform becomes audible. Dosing is the difference between ignition and injury. Minutes, not marathons at first. Keep it nasal, keep it smooth, keep it reversible. If you cannot speak mid-breath, you are forcing. Retentions holding after inhale or exhale are potent switches. Learn them with a teacher and avoid them when you are sleep-deprived, pregnant, ill, or already running hot. Fast, flashy, skull-shining breaths may feel dramatic, but drama is not the measure, tomorrow is. If sleep breaks, if appetite vanishes, if you become irritable or grand while practical life frays, that is not awakening, that is flooding. Turn the dose down until function returns. Input arrow, process arrow. Output keeps you honest. Input, 6 slow nasal breaths per minute. An exhale roughly twice the inhale. A soft hum on the out-breath. A darkened room, and a supported body. Process. CO2 tolerance inches up. The diaphragm stops hitching. Vagal tone nudges higher. Heart and lungs begin to entrain, and cortical chatter yields to sensory detail. Output. Warmth returns to fingers and toes. Thought speed drops a gear. Attention widens to include the room, and for a while you stop arguing with reality. That is the serpent learning your language. You will be tempted to chase fireworks, heat like a furnace, tremor like a drum solo, lights behind the eyes. Sometimes those are healthy discharges. Sometimes they are the nervous system filing a complaint. The sober path is simpler. Keep the dose low enough that your life works better tomorrow. The measure of a good session is not how far out you flew, but how intact you are when you land. Sleep, speech, patience, appetite, honesty. More voltage is not more spiritual, more capacity is. There is a reason many traditions pair sound with breath. Vowel tones shape the mouth and palate, changing pressure and resonance along the central channel. A closed mouth hum occupies the face. An open ah lifts the chest. A round ooh settles the belly. You are teaching the serpent a path by drawing it with sound. Over weeks, the waveform that was scattered begins to organize. Shoulders stop shouting. The lower back learns to be a river instead of a dam. That is what opening the channel looks like in a regulated body. No fireworks, just flow. Everything that matters about breath is transferable. Use it at the sink, in the queue before you speak. Long exhale before the call you dread. A soft hum in the car where no one hears you. A minute of nasal sixes in the bathroom between meetings. You are not adding a new religion. You are reclaiming the steering wheel from reflex. When the metronome is steady, the waveform can rise without ripping the fabric. Breath tunes the instrument. Vibration sweetens it. Posture guides it. When those three agree, a different phenomenon becomes obvious, not spectacle, but an interior brightness that does not depend on mood or room. That is where we go next. The lamp hidden in the skull, and how to approach it without mistaking light for license. There is a lamp in the skull, and it does not run on belief. The ancients named it with symbols, the eye in the brow, the flame in the head, because the real thing is hard to talk about without myth. Keep the ethic we've built so far. Mechanism first, meaning second. The pineal is small, yes, but it behaves like a lens and a metronome. It listens to light and darkness, shapes hormones that set the body's clock. And this is where lineage and science brush sleeves seems to take part in a subtler brightness many experience when the system is quiet, coherent, and ready. Start with the simple physics of being alive. Light hits skin and retina by day. Darkness bathes you by night. That cycle tunes your chemistry. When dusk is real, fewer screens, less glare. The body raises melatonin and lowers its guard. When dawn is real, eyes on the sky before the phone, the clock resets. The pineal is part of this choreography. Some researchers have reported light-like signals inside tissue, biophotons, tiny emissions that might be another way cells talk. Don't turn that into a religion. Keep it as a clue that the body is not only chemistry, it is also a conversation of signals that can look like light. Geometry whispers the same thing your breath learned last chapter. Spirals everywhere, shells, storms, galaxies also appear in the microarchitecture of the body. The pineal's folded shapes echo patterns the serpent loves to travel, not in straight lines, but in turns that store and release. When you sit very still after soft breath and a little sound, a thin brightness can gather behind closed eyes. It is not the flood of a screen, more like first light on the horizon, a noticing, an inner seeing that doesn't yank you out of the body but settles you deeper in. That is enough. You don't need to call it mystical to treat it with respect. Temples built conditions, not fantasies. Darkness was a teacher because darkness removes noise. Chant was a teacher because it organizes breath and pressure around the midline. Fasting was a teacher because lower load makes more room for subtle signals. These are not commandments. They are statecraft. You use them to tune the instrument so the lamp can glow without blinding you. In lineage houses, the order was strict. Capacity, then current. Clarity, then color. Conduct, then vision. The lamp confirmed character. It did not replace it. Micro story. You wake before the city. Curtains drawn. Phone in another room. 6 rounds of slow nasal breathing with a soft hum on the exhale. Then stillness. No chasing. No clutching at pictures. For a minute or two, there is a quiet brightness behind the eyes, like a room remembering its windows. When you stand, you don't feel holy, you feel simple. Breakfast tastes like food. The day meets you without a fight. That is the point. Light that improves behavior is trustworthy. Light that demands a story while your life phrase is a trick. The mind will want spectacle. Let it want. You are training for function. Entoptic flashes, little stars, drifting shapes, are a normal feature of vision when eyes are closed and pressure shifts. Inner sound can grow loud when rumination drops. You are hearing your own wiring hum. None of that means nothing. It means don't sell your sanity to it. Use the same yardstick as before. If sleep, speech, patience, and honesty improve, the lamp is doing its job. If you grow brittle, grand, and sleepless while announcing breakthroughs, you are out over your skis. Step back. Input arrow. Process arrow. Output keeps you honest even here. Input. Dawn light to the eyes before screens. Dusk light that dims on purpose. A darkened room for practice. Slow breath with gentle tone. And days that include movement, food, and honest work. Process. Circadian signals realign. Melatonin rises when it should. Cortical chatter drops under the hum of rhythm. Attention becomes less grabby and the midline stops leaking pressure into the jaw and shoulders. Output. You feel a quiet brightness that does not argue with reality. A steadier mood, a cleaner yes-no, a kinder mouth. If the output is drama, turn the input down. You will hear theories about chemicals the brain might make in rare states. Keep your balance. Curiosity is fine. Chasing chemistry is not the path. The path is behavior. The lamp is not a theme park. It is a work light for the soul. It illuminates what needs doing, what needs mending, what needs relinquishing. If you come out of sitting with a sudden need to apologize to someone you hurt, that's light. If you come out with a plan to monetize your visions, that's the shadow looking for a stage. Light hygiene is practice, not performance. Let morning find your eyes. Let evening find your limits. Make a small fast from noise each day, a corridor of quiet where you are not translating the world through headlines and endless clips. Use sound as a guide rope. A minute of humming, a simple tone, a line of prayer if you keep one. Keep the body in the story. A spine that stacks without strain, a jaw that lets go, a tongue that rests instead of bracing against the roof of the mouth. The lamp responds to reality, not theater. It brightens when you stop pretending. The pineal's gift is not fireworks. It is orientation. It points you at true north when the landscape of impulse tries to sell you shortcuts. That is why the old symbols call it an eye. Not because you will see things, but because you will see through things, your own excuses, your favorite lies, the costumes of hunger that pretend to be devotion. And when that seeing lands, the serpent current does not have to shout. It rises in step with light and breath, smooth and sane. Here is the sobriety that keeps you safe. Open a portal with an unready vessel and the light will burn. Skip the boring work of sleep, food, boundaries, and breath, and the lamp becomes a glare that scatters you. Honor the sequence, capacity before current, conduct before color, and what could have fractured you will refine you. From here, we have to tell the truth most sellers skip. What happens when the voltage outruns the vessel? Why the body shakes and breaks, and how to stabilize before you ask for another spark. Open the lamp with an unready vessel, and the light burns. When voltage outruns capacity, the body pays first, then the mind, then your ordinary life. This is not punishment, it's physics. You breathe too hard for too long, stack retentions on a nervous system already running hot, fast, or depleted, and the signals that felt like grace become noise. Head pressure that won't level out, ringing in the ears, a furnace in the spine with no way to distribute heat, tremors that no longer discharge but agitate, sleep that shatters at 2 a.m. as if the whole house just stood up. The stories will try to name it as instant enlightenment or an attack. Keep the ethic, mechanism first. The autonomic system has flipped from regulated flow into whiplash, surges of fight and flight, then collapse, then a dissociated float that looks serene on the outside and feels like absence on the inside. Because the signs mimic other states, people get misread and mislabeled by themselves and by others. Anxiety, hypomania, psychosis, depersonalization, derealization, words that carry weight and history. Some cases are exactly that and deserve clinical care. Some are dysregulated activation wearing religion's clothes. Your job is not to play doctor on yourself. Your job is to use a sane yardstick. When the system is healthy, the ordinary things improve even as the inner current grows. Sleep, appetite, patience, honesty, steadiness under pressure. The ability to apologize without a campaign speech. When the system is flooded, ordinary life frays while the inner story inflates. Grand plans, brittle boundaries, spiritualized avoidance, big language about destiny, and very small acts of kindness at home. The lineage rule is blunt. If function drops, you are not ascending, you are burning. Micro story. You blitz a weekend of aggressive breathwork and night sittings because you felt so close on Friday. By Monday, your scalp pulses, your chest can't decide whether to sprint or stall, and food feels like ash. You tell yourself it's purification and double the dose. By Wednesday, your messages are sharp, your sleep is shards, and you start picking fights with people who love you. Nothing mystical is happening. You are overbreathing, underresting, and overdosing on novelty. Pause. Return to the basics the sellers skip because basics don't trend. The stabilization stack is simple and unfashionable. First, stop the pushes. No forceful pranayama, no retentions, no bandha locks held like a dare. No fasting, no late-night sits, no sensory deprivation boxes. Switch to quiet nasal breathing. Extend the exhale by a beat or two. Keep breath silent enough that a person next to you wouldn't hear it. Ears open to the room, eyes soft on the horizon, jaw unhooked, tongue resting. Orient your body to where you are. Feel the chair, the floor, the wall at your back. Walk, slow, rhythmic, arms swinging, eyes on distance, not the ground. Choose food that is warm, simple, and regular. Hydrate like it matters. Skip stimulants and shortcuts. No caffeine surges in the morning to focus. No alcohol at night to sleep. No psychedelics to get through it. You are not chasing through. You are coming back to baseline. Vagal toning works if you keep it kind. Humming quietly, gargling, a gentle splash of cool water on the face can persuade the body toward its breaks. Extreme cold on a system already in shock is theater, not therapy. Weight helps. A blanket, a sandbag across the belly, a friend's hand on your upper back with your consent. Touch is a technology. So is company. Do not isolate yourself in the name of being high vibration. Sit with someone regulated. Eat with someone who isn't impressed by you. Let their calm nervous system help yours remember how to be boring. Sleep hygiene is not a lifestyle brand, it is electricity management. Lights down after sunset, screens dim and distant, no intense practice after dusk. Bed for sleep, not scrolling. Dawn light to the eyes before you give your attention away. If insomnia has teeth, lower the ambition of your days until your nights return. You are rebuilding the transformer, not performing for a feed. Sometimes the bravest practice is brushing your teeth, paying a bill, washing a dish, phoning a friend, and going to bed on purpose. Input arrow, process arrow, output still applies when you are flooded. Input, halt the pushes, soften breath, shorten sessions, add warmth, add food, add walking, add company, reduce light and noise. Process. Chemoreceptors settle as CO2 normalizes, the baroreflex stops screaming, sympathetic surges find an exit through motion. The vagal network is massaged by vibration rather than strangled by retentions. Inflammatory signals cool because you stopped poking the bear. Output. The furnace becomes warmth. Tremor becomes discharge. Thoughts slow enough to be placed. Sleep returns in longer strips. Apologies come easier, your jokes get better, and your promises shrink to a size you can keep. That is not failure. That is repair. Red lines exist and they are not tests of devotion. If chest pain, suicidal ideation, violent impulses, hallucinations, days without sleep, or sudden collapses appear, this is not the moment to argue about mysticism on the internet. Seek clinical help. Tell the truth about what you've been doing. Ask for practitioners who understand trauma physiology. If a teacher tells you to push through red lines to prove your surrender, leave. A lineage worthy of your life will put your life first. Ethics keep you safe when capacity wobbles. Power without conscience recruits your shadow. Grandiosity, sexual boundary slippage, money mess, manipulation dressed as guidance, these are not side quests, they are the main risk. If you start speaking like a prophet and living like a child, you are not awake, you are uncontained. Close the temple. Announce a pause to yourself and one trusted person. Choose 40 days of baseline, sleep, food, work, service, simple breath, walk, and let the voltage settle into conduct. When in doubt, serve someone and say less. Nothing about stabilization is glamorous, which is why sellers hide it and elders insist on it. The serpent is not offended by your breaks. It respects them. It rises when the vessel can carry it without tearing. The sign you're learning the real art is simple. You can stop. You can choose not to practice today. You can feel the itch to chase and do the opposite. That is sovereignty. Now that you have seen the cost of forcing and the dignity of repair, the next question is ugly and essential. How did the maps that kept people safe get flattened into decor and slogans, and who benefits when secrecy is mocked and pace is sold as cowardice? The maps didn't vanish, they were flattened. First by conquest, then by curiosity without context, and finally by commerce. Conquerors don't debate cosmology, they standardize it. Temples become warehouses, rites become curiosities, elders become folklore. What couldn't be taxed or tallied was called superstition and pushed to the margins. The serpent survived in stone and story, but its safety rails, the slow pacing, the tests of conduct, the communal container were the first things to go. Control prefers surface. Depth is hard to police. Then came measurement divorced from mentorship. Reductionism did what it does well. It asked, what can we count? If it couldn't be counted, it was discounted. Breath was reduced to oxygen, chant to noise, initiation to theater. The same rooms that once tuned resonance were photographed, catalogued, and discussed as architecture, while the practices they were built to hold were dismissed. None of this requires a villain. It's a story of incentives. Careers reward what can be published, not what must be practiced. Institutions prize repeatable results over the irreducible honesty of a human nervous system learning to carry more light without losing kindness. Commerce arrived last, smiling. When a symbol loses its context, it becomes decor. The Jed became a print, the eye became a logo, the caduceus, a brand. The line between medicine for the soul and merchandise for the feed blurred until an activation could be packaged, priced, and promised on a weekend. You weren't invited to build capacity, you were offered an experience. Experiences sell better than ethics. Ethics are slow. Micro-story, you walk into a studio, there's a mural of a serpent and a stack of mats. The flyer promises instant awakening with no prior experience needed. There is a playlist, a ring light, and a waiver no one reads. No one asks if you're sleeping. No one asks about your medications, your history, your supports, or your stress. No screening, no supervision, no integration, only a promise and a price. If you shake, it's called success. If you fracture, it's called resistance. If you disappear, there is always another class. Nothing dark or grand is required to explain it. Attention rewards spectacle. Spectacle sells seats. Seats keep the lights on. Control isn't always a conscious plan. Often it is a side effect of systems designed around predictability and profit. A sovereign nervous system, one that can hold charge without being whipped by fear or bought by novelty, is inconvenient to both. Sovereign people take longer to persuade. They ask for time and truth. They want teachers who can say not yet, programs that include pause, and communities that measure progress by behavior, not by heat in the crown. That is difficult to monetize quickly. So the market gravitates to what scales: volume, novelty, and a rhetoric of destiny that flatters the ego while bypassing the discipline that would actually set it free. The internet multiplied this logic and made it louder. Algorithms don't care about your ethics, they care about watch time. Nuance doesn't trend, promises do. The older houses relied on whispered transmission because whispers include responsibility. Platforms amplify the opposite. You are encouraged to be a brand before you are a student. You are taught to perform your practice before you have one. You are rewarded for the story of awakening rather than the work of becoming someone whose speech is cleaner, whose debts are paid, whose appetite is sane, whose presence is trustworthy. This is not an indictment of technology, it is a note about what it pays. There are exceptions everywhere. There are scientists who sit, priests who breathe, doctors who hum, and teachers who return fees and send you home to sleep. This critique is about systems and incentives, not straw villains. The point is to see why secrecy and pacing once existed so you can rebuild them in a world that doesn't provide them by default. Elders acted like circuit breakers. They knew the limits of your wiring better than your hunger did. They could say, "Not yet, enough," and go apologize, and you would listen because your status didn't depend on likes. It depended on living closely with people who saw you daily and could test your claim by your conduct. Erasure also happened inside the traditions. When politics entered the temple, shortcuts thrived. When charisma outran character, abuse hid behind costume. When a lineage grew too certain of itself, it mistook power for purity and forgot the poor who needed medicine more than mystery. The serpent does not belong to any flag. It rises in kitchens and fields and night shifts. The moment a house forgets service, the current goes elsewhere. Flattening is not only something they did, it is what happens whenever we betray the boring work that keeps power clean. Input arrow, process arrow. Output can decode this history without a single conspiracy. Input, conquest, extractive study, and a market that rewards novelty over nuance. Process, rights removed from containers, symbols stripped of safety rails, breath divorced from ethics, attention sold by the minute. Output, decor instead of maps, workshops instead of apprenticeship, promises instead of preparation, and a public that confuses fireworks with function. None of that makes the serpent less true. It makes your job clearer. So what do you do with this? You stop asking the market to keep you safe. You rebuild the missing rails yourself. You choose teachers who can name who trained them and who can name what they refuse to do. You choose communities where your life, not your language, gets better. You keep a private practice long enough to tell the difference between the days you're hungry for truth and the days you're hungry for performance. You hold symbols the way the old houses did, as instruments, not ornaments. You treat secrecy like a form of love, not to exclude but to protect pace. The deeper reason the maps were hidden is the same reason they still matter. A human being who has tasted the inner current and learned to carry it quietly is hard to bully, easy to trust, and slow to sell. That kind of person does not need constant noise, does not outsource their choices to fashion or fear, and does not perform piety to hide unfinished work. Systems that prioritize predictability will always prefer citizens who drift rather than stand. You are being invited to stand. And standing requires more than outrage at erasure. It requires discernment in the market and discipline in the dark, so that when you meet the serpent, you meet it as someone who cannot be bought by bliss or bent by panic. From here, we turn the critique into practice. If the market sells fireworks, you will learn to choose function. If platforms reward performance, you will learn to build capacity where no one can see. The next chapter is not a denunciation, it is a manual for choosing sovereignty over spiritual consumerism. So the current you court does not turn you into a customer when it could be turning you into a creator. You do not need another activation, you need discernment. Sovereignty begins with the most subversive sentence in modern spirituality. No, not yet. Sellers teach you to chase spectacle. Elders teach you to choose function. The market optimizes for novelty, velocity, and volume. Your nervous system optimizes for rhythm, repair, and relationship. When you let the market set your pace, you become a customer. When you let your capacity set your pace, you become a practitioner. That is the line between being consumed by experiences and becoming someone who can carry power without breaking. Red flags are consistent across trends because incentives are consistent. Promises of guaranteed awakening. One-size-fits-all protocols. No screening beyond a waiver. No intake questions about sleep, medication, trauma, or support. No aftercare beyond a poem. Pressure language, you're resisting, and trust the process, not surrender to the teacher. Paywalls around safety instructions. Urgency discounts that punish hesitation. Rhetoric that flatters your specialness while eroding your boundaries. A camera pointed at you more than a teacher attending to you. Teachers who can't say the words, "not yet." Green flags are less shiny but far more useful. Teachers who can name their teachers. Lineage that can name its limits. A clear scope, what they do, what they don't, and when they refer out. Screening that asks dull, practical questions because your life matters more than their content calendar. Pacing that includes the word pause. Language that prefers "let's see" over "I know." Refunds that are honored. Consent that is active, revocable, and specific. No promises about outcomes, many promises about care. Integration plans in writing. Aftercare schedule, referral network, and boundaries that are enforceable and transparent. Money clarity, sexual boundaries, no cult of personality. Micro story. You message a facilitator about a weekend intensive. They ask about your nights, your meds, your stress, your food, your people. They say, "I think a weekly group and a walk every evening will help more than this workshop." If you still want to come in a season, right again. You feel a small sting of pride and a large sigh of relief. That feeling, the one that widens your chest instead of inflaming your crown, is the scent of a room that could hold you. Choose those rooms. Discernment also means audit your motives. Many arrive at practice with a subtle hunger to be exceptional. The serpent does not feed that hunger. It exposes it. Ask 3 questions before you sign anything. Am I seeking regulation or sensation? Am I avoiding a conversation by choosing a ceremony? Am I buying a story to perform rather than a practice to live? If you can't answer without posturing, wait. Humility stretches time. Urgency collapses it. Because sovereignty is behavioral, give it shape. Set a budget for learning that includes money for rest, food, and time off. If a program consumes what your body needs to recover, it is too expensive no matter the brochure. Put your practice where no one can see it. First thing before the phone or last thing before sleep, in a room with more gravity than goals. Keep a log for 2 weeks. Breath minutes, sleep hours, appetite, patience level, relational friction. If those markers rise with your practice, you are building capacity. If they sink while your stories grow, you are chasing. Consent is not a disclaimer. It is a relationship. Choose facilitators who do not touch you without asking, who do not speak for your experience, who can hold paradox without winning. Choose peers who are not impressed by claims and who celebrate your smallest ethical win more than your loudest mystical one. If a group punishes your boundaries, your questions, or your pauses, it is not a spiritual community. It is a consumer funnel with incense. Leave kindly, keep your dignity. Input arrow, process arrow. Output remains your compass. Input, capacity first choices, screening, small doses, slow breath, regular food, real sleep, sunlight at dawn, darkness at dusk, community that tells you the truth. Process. The autonomic system spends more time in calm engagement than in spike and crash. Rumination gives way to sensing. Heat distributes instead of pooling. Excitement matures into commitment. Output. You become easier to live with, harder to sell to, slower to offend, faster to repair, and clearer about what you will and will not do. The market will keep offering fireworks. Politely, decline most. The path is not anti-beauty, it is anti-extraction. Beauty that breaks your sleep is expensive. Practices that feed your vanity will starve your integrity. Replace consumption with craft. Build a breath you can return to on dull days. Learn a tone that quiets you in traffic. Find a posture that makes honesty easier. Keep the altar small and the fridge stocked. Track results in how you work, how you speak, and who you become when no one is looking. Sovereignty also means refusing to outsource your ethics. Power without conduct is corrosion. Make 4 vows to yourself that no teacher can waive. I will not harm for a high. I will not spend what I need for stability. I will not evangelize what I have not integrated. I will not confuse charisma with character, mine or anyone else's. Post them where you practice. Read them before you agree to anything intense. If any leader asks you to break one, the conversation is over. Finally become a creator, not a brand. Creation begins in privacy. Write notes after practice that no one will read. Compose 1 question for a mentor instead of a paragraph for the internet. Offer kindness in the smallest radius you control. A home-cooked meal, a kept promise, a quiet apology. This is how current becomes culture, one household at a time, one schedule at a time, until your life is a room where the serpent would choose to live even if no one ever knew your name. From here, with discernment in place and consumer reflex softened, we can speak about the mature union the old houses hid in plain sight. The solar principle of clarity meeting the serpent current of power. Not escape into light, but incarnation with it. We call it the Solar Serpent, and it begins with daily protocols that are simple, repeatable, and sane. The work is not to rise and vanish. It is to rise and remain. The serpent is power. The sun is clarity. When they meet, you don't escape the world, you inhabit it cleanly. The old houses hid this marriage in plain sight. Serpent coiling through the staff, sun crowning the brow. In your body it looks simpler. Breath that keeps time. A spine that carries charge without theater. A heart that steadies the room you're in. This is the Solar Serpent. Current braided with conscience, voltage braided with vision, practice braided with a life that works. Begin where morning begins. Let dawn touch your eyes before the phone does. That light is not a mood. It is a metronome that sets the day's chemistry and teaches the lamp to glow when it should. Stand, stack head over heart over pelvis, and take 6 rounds of slow nasal breathing with a soft hum on the out-breath. No pushing. The hum is not a spell, it's a pressure wave that smooths edges. If you have 3 more minutes, add a gentle twist and a hinge, then walk 5 to 10 unremarkable minutes. Eyes on distance. You just taught the serpent a path and the sun a schedule. Breakfast tastes like food. The day feels less like a test. Carry the rhythm into the middle hours. Before a hard conversation or a complex task, choose 1 minute. Inhale softly through the nose. Exhale a hair longer, hum once, then speak. Between meetings, find a wall and let the back of your skull rest against it. Let the ribs fall and the shoulders melt. If you sit long, place both feet on the floor and widen your attention to include the room. These are not hacks. They are micro-rehearsals that keep charge from pooling and stories from seizing the wheel. The serpent loves repetition more than heroics. The sun loves order more than drama. Midday is honest about appetite. Eat warm food. Drink water. If you can, step into sunlight and blink at the horizon. No squinting contest, just proof to your clock that the world is still here and so are you. If you need to change state, hum again, quiet enough that a person nearby wouldn't hear it. If the day swells and you feel heat gather in the skull, don't perform a practice. Go for a walk, hands swinging, jaw unhooked, eyes on distance. Nothing looks spiritual about it, that's why it works. Evening belongs to descent. Lights down, screens far, the gentlest breath you can keep. If the day left stones in your chest, a short, low chant can turn them to sand. If words feel tight in the throat, a quiet hum can turn them back into air. Write 3 lines. What helped, what hurt, what to repeat. Not for likes, for orientation. When the room darkens and your body learns that darkness is safe, the lamp brightens without glare. Sleep is where the Solar Serpent repairs the wiring. Guard it like a temple. Micro story. You used to white-knuckle the week and crash on Friday. Now you keep a small ritual on Wednesdays. You finish work, put the phone in a drawer, walk 10 minutes under the last light, eat something warm and sit for 6 slow breaths with a hum at the end of each. No visions, no vows. You text 1 apology you owe. You wash a dish. You sleep. On Thursday, you are less clever and more useful. That is the serpent and the sun agreeing. Advancement is not about louder sensations, it is about cleaner signals. How do you know when to add load? The ordinary markers move in your favor, sleep steadier, appetite sane, patience available, promises kept, speech cleaner. When those rise for 2 weeks, extend a practice by a minute, add a second hum round, hold a posture a breath longer. If any marker slides, you roll it back for 7 days. That is not cowardice, it is craft. The body learns through repetition, it can celebrate tomorrow. The serpent has time. The sun is coming back either way. When to rest is as important as when to rise. Rest when you are grieving, when sleep is thin, when your speech turns sharp, when you are hiding in practice from a conversation you need to have. Rest when fascination with states outpaces care for people. Rest when you notice yourself narrating your practice instead of living it. On rest days, make the rituals smaller and the rooms warmer. Walk, eat, call a friend, hum once in the dark, read a page that makes you quieter. Say thank you out loud. The current respects breaks. Input arrow, process arrow, output remains your compass. Input, dawn light before screens, small morning practice, simple food, short walks, midday horizon, evening dimming, brief chant or hum, a page of notes and one act of service in your actual life. Process, circadian rhythms anchor, breath mechanics smooth, vagal tone eases reactivity. Heat distributes through tissue instead of spiking in the skull. Attention widens and stops mistaking urgency for importance. Output, you are steadier, kinder, less appetized by spectacle, more allergic to lies, including your own. You become someone other people can lean on without you collapsing or performing. That is what energy work is supposed to produce. Community and mentorship turn practice into a culture that can catch you when you slip. Choose a small circle that measures progress by behavior, not by stories. A mentor worth trusting asks about sleep and money and how you spoke to the person who annoyed you, not about your colors and crowns. They can say pause without punishing you and advance without flattering you. Peers worth keeping are unimpressed by your heat and very impressed by your honesty. If a room penalizes your boundaries or sells you urgency, that's not a temple. That's a funnel. Leave gently. Service is how the Solar Serpent proves itself. Power that does not lower itself is just performance. Choose one radius and sanctify it. Your family table, your building stairwell, your team's meeting, your street at dawn. Cook once a week. Carry a bag for someone. Pay a bill on time. Tell the truth where a lie would be cheaper. None of it photographs well. All of it conducts well. The current you're courting was never meant to inflate you. It was meant to irrigate the ground you stand on. You will have seasons when the lamp glows easily and the waveform climbs without effort. You will have seasons when everything feels made of grit. Both are practice. On bright days, stay humble. On rough days, stay simple. The marriage you are making, serpent with sun, doesn't need your mythology, it needs your maintenance. One breath you can return to. One sound that softens you. One posture that reminds you to stand like someone the current could trust. Do this quietly for long enough and the room will change when you enter. Not because you're special, but because you are stable. The oldest houses would call that a blessing. The market can't sell it. Your life can. The teaching was hidden because it is honest about cost. You cannot outsource the work, you cannot buy the vessel, and you cannot bargain with voltage. The serpent is not a slogan. It is a waveform that will engrave whatever it finds, your discipline or your denial. The old house is new. Capacity before current, conduct before color, community before claim. You do not rise by accident. You rise by rhythm. Look back at the map you have built in your own body. You learn to treat the spine like a staff, the breath like a steering wheel, attention like a lens, and the nervous system like wiring that must be maintained. You learn to tell the difference between opening and flooding, to read signs in sleep, appetite, speech, and patience. You learn that secrecy is not a wall, but a door with a test. Can you pause? Can you listen? Can you carry? This sobriety is not the enemy of mystery. It is the condition that allows mystery to make you honest instead of unhinged. The lineage was never elitism, it was harm reduction. Elders guarded the pace because they had seen what happens when voltage outruns a human life. They built rooms that tuned sound and breath. They wrote ethics because power without conduct rots the hand that holds it. What was flattened by conquest, reduced by metrics, and sold by commerce is now yours to rebuild on purpose. Rails, brakes, and a culture that measures progress by behavior, not by heat. The serpent is mechanism, the sun is meaning. When they braid, you do not become someone else. You become soberly yourself. You do not escape the market, the inbox, the family, the street. You enter them with a steadier pulse and a cleaner mouth. The proof is not a story. The proof is a day that works. Fewer lies, fewer avoidances, more repairs, more quiet joy that does not require an audience. This is what the old symbols were for, not fireworks, but function. You also learned that the lamp in the skull is not a theme park. You approached it with light hygiene, dark rooms, simple tones, and the humility to stop when drama tried to steal the wheel. You watched for the one output that cannot be faked: orientation, a truer yes-no, an urge to apologize rather than advertise, a taste for work over witnesses. Light that improves conduct is trustworthy. Light that demands followers is glare. You discovered the cost of forcing and the dignity of repair. You saw that stabilization is not defeat, it is devotion to reality. Warm food, slow walks, quiet breath, company, sleep. These are the practices that keep the transformer intact. You set red lines and you honored them. You made vows no teacher could waive. Do not harm for a high. Do not spend what stability needs. Do not evangelize what you have not integrated. Do not mistake charisma for character. The serpent respects those vows because those vows give it somewhere to live that will not poison the people around you. Input arrow. Process arrow. Output remains your compass past this film. Input dawn light before screens. Small morning practice, honest labor, meals at sane hours, breaks that include horizons, evenings that dim on purpose, and one act of service inside the radius you actually live in. Process. The autonomic system spends more time in calm engagement. Breath mechanics become quiet competence. Heat distributes instead of spiking. Inner sound becomes guidance instead of noise. Attention widens and stops mistaking urgency for importance. Output. Steadier days, kinder speech, fewer compulsions, cleaner choices, and a body that would rather be regulated than remarkable. That is awakening you can test. Sovereignty is not a mood, it is maintenance. It looks like saying no to an invitation that would flatter you and harm your sleep. It looks like choosing a teacher who can say pause without punishing you. It looks like returning to the most boring breath on the day you would rather be a comet. It looks like a budget that pays for food and rent before it pays for the next experience. It looks like telling the truth when a cheaper lie is available. That is how the serpent becomes culture, your culture, one routine at a time. You may never post about any of this. Good. The current prefers privacy. Creation begins off camera. Keep notes no one will read. Practice where the algorithm can't grade you. Let your life be the certificate. If you need public language, keep it simple and verifiable. I sleep. I keep my word. I apologize faster. I spend less on spectacle. I am kinder at home. What then is Kundalini for? Not escape, not status, not stories. It is for becoming a clear instrument in a noisy world. It is for remembering that power without conscience is just appetite with better words. It is for making a body that conducts love without show, and a mind that sees through its own tricks. It is for returning gifts to the places that raised you, your family, your street, your work, your watershed, until your days are a room the current would choose to live in. We end where we began. You are not here to awaken Kundalini. Kundalini is here to awaken you. If you let it, it will strip slogans from your mouth, hurry from your hands, and glamour from your gaze. It will not make you untouchable. It will make you useful. It will not crown you. It will steady you. It will not turn you into a brand. It will turn you into a harbor. If you're ready for the uncut diagrams, safety checklists, and practice notes we can't publish here, join the free newsletter at the link in the description, enter your email, and for a limited time, you'll also receive a free ebook copy. Miss it and you'll be guessing in the dark while others are building capacity in daylight. If you feel this on a deep level, comment, "I get the code."